You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Glad to be here, Jim.
What an interesting day on the markets. When I first got up this morning, the boards were green, everything was going up, and then an hour later, they were painted red. What happened?
You know, there's all forms of insanity out there. You know, we can talk about all kinds in the political world and so forth, but, you know, the market has its own unique insanity, and the current version is a company called NVIDIA, which it's really hard to describe because, you know, I've been in the business for so many decades, and, you know, you see this on occasion, but I don't think to the extent that we've seen it with this particular stock and with its promoter, CEO, Jensen Huang, who is a great salesman, who does a great job in promoting his company and doing some great things. And no doubt he's been successful. He's been really, you're really right on with the trend, you know, with AI and these Blackwell chips that NVIDIA creates, which are unique and actually become a point of negotiation between Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia and China, who gets these Blackwell chips that NVIDIA produces. I mean, it's over the top in terms of the impact that one stock or one company or one CEO has on the markets. And at some point, you know, you become top heavy and the cart just falls over. And I think the rug got pulled out from under NVIDIA today, the same day that Walmart, which took off, had a nice big run in the down market, which is a whole other subject. But, you know, basically, it's the end of the year. If you're a money manager and you've got big profits, and particularly in a stock like NVIDIA or the SMH, which is the semiconductor index, or the overall market, often you're compensated based on the performance that you generate during the year. And do you want to give that up in the unlikely or likely event, depending on how you interpret the market, that it could sell off into the end of the year rather than have the traditional Santa Claus rally or Thanksgiving turkey shoot, which we could talk about in a moment? And I think part and parcel is, you know, sell the news, you know, take your profits. And despite the fact that they reported really strong earnings yesterday after the close, the stock did not make a new high. It ran up, I think it was like 210, 12 area, got to 198. And, you know, in fact, it couldn't break through on some strong earnings. I think it was also motivation for some traders and maybe money managers to hit the trigger. But, you know, going back to the insanity thing, I mean, how and why does one stock, you know, control the market, so to speak? I mean, the entire stock market is waiting for one stock. Now, if that's not a danger sign to the condition of the stock market or the equity markets in whole, I don't know what is. And to me, that's a very big negative. I mean, anything happens to that one stock, and well, we already know that like 70% of the advance in the S&P, I believe is the number, was attributed to a handful of stocks. You know, I mean, it's a joke. So, you know, I've been in the business for, you know, years. I've been around stocks for years, and I'm not the only one who sees this. But, you know, at some point we're going to pay the piper for it, and whether this is the time or not, you know, time will tell. But you're asking a short-term question, and I think it was profit-taking. I think it's, you know, a seasonality pattern here. Are we going to hang into the market and hope that it doesn't sell off and, you know, ring the register, so to speak? Now, if you're a technician, as I am, the charts shows very important resistance lines, trend lines, as we call them, and we hit the top of those quote-unquote channels. If you can imagine a channel rising with a stock zigzagging within the channel, many stocks just hit the top of the channel, including the big indexes. So we were overdone. So, you know, the market's been screwy in a lot of ways this year. You know, normally you get a big sell-off in, you know, October or September, and then you rally into the end of the year. And this year, you know, we had sell-off, you know, later and earlier than we expected. We had the big one, as you know, in July. on the Liberation Day, in April, on the Liberation Day story from Trump. So the market has pulled a lot of surprises out of its, rear pockets here, so to speak. But I'm not interested in NVIDIA. It's too high, has too much risk if things change. There is going to be competition for its products at some point. And, some big analysts say don't sell it, hold it forever. And maybe it'll just correct and then run through a little bear cycle and just come roaring back a few weeks or months from now. But short term, I think that's the best answer I can give you. It just got top heavy, and people decide to sell the news. The expression buy the rumor, sell the news. Well, they sold the news.
What's going on with gold?
Gold is just holding here right at support. We're pricing it in U.S. dollars here, but at the 4,000 level. And it's been trading between this 4,000 and 4,150 level. And I think that's sort of is going to guide the short-term direction here. Under the 4,000, you've got numbers anywhere from 3,900 down to 3,300. And above the 4,150, then you've got a shot at the 4,400 high. Silver is in a similar situation. It's sitting right at support at $50. And you got support right around here and all the way down to $43. And interesting with silver in the last week or so, it actually ran up and double topped right here at that $55 level and came back. So on a relative basis, silver was a bit stronger here since the big top that we saw a couple of weeks back. So we just have to watch it. But I know it would seem to me that, like anything else, it got overdone and there is that risk of a pullback. But there are other things happening out there in the stock market which concerns me besides just NVIDIA, and one of which is what's going on in Japan right now. So we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Well, Japanese bond yields have started to surge, and it's the problem because there's something known as the carry trade. So what investors have done, they borrowed money in Japan at ultra-low rate interest in Japanese yen and invested in high-yielding assets elsewhere. And if those rates go up as they're now doing, there could be an unwinding of that. And we've seen like many crashes in the overall stock market internationally when Japan runs into a problem with that carry trade. So with rates going up there, this could be the unspoken disaster waiting to happen here that could take all the markets down, not just the U.S., as I said. So the fact that the Japanese government is having problem here, the inflation is increased with they consider high, that 2% level, and there's going to be rising volatility in the yen that could cause currency shocks, and it can ripple through just the global market. So Japan is a big player and has a big impact on the world financial system. And we think, it's only U.S. and China, but so this is sort of brewing problem and not really being talked about. And I think we can get a little potential crash situation out of this, or a big sell-off anyway. And whether it's going to happen in the next week or the next 90 days, something could be happening here, which may be part and parcel to this topping action we're seeing in the overall market, and I guess indirectly NVIDIA and some of the other high flyers that really came under pressure here today. So the ones that are really extended, like NVIDIA and others, we can talk about Advanced Micro Devices and a lot of other big names out there that are down a lot. That could be sort of the tail wagging the dog scenario here, where they're sort of warning us what's happening. So I am concerned for the market, and technically it looks way extended. And I don't want to give out numbers here. My clients know the numbers, but where we could be headed on a correction.
On the cryptocurrency front, I saw Bitcoin took quite a hit, at least earlier in the day. What's the status there?
Well, subscribers to my blockchain letter know within the last 2 weeks we liquidated all our blockchain positions. Now, we nibbled at a couple of them very small here the last few days just because I didn't want to have nothing in there. But we sold Bitcoin and Coinbase and Ethereum. We just dumped them, and this was like 10 days ago. So the charts were saying, watch out. We hit a record high in August at 126,000, and I think I even mentioned in these previous interviews it could be risk all the way down to 75,000. And it seemed like a crazy statement even last week when we talked about that number, because the Bitcoin itself, of course I'm just referring to Bitcoin here, was over 100,000, and it got down to about 86,000 today. I have to double check that number. So it's getting close to that 78,000 level. And that doesn't mean it can't go lower. I mean, it could be 50 or 60,000, but that was sort of a benchmark number that I was looking for. Then you're going to have potential year-end tax selling. People that are in the Bitcoin or some of the other coins are going to, maybe have to sell to establish losses into the end of the year, and that could create more, panic to the downside. So we went into you want to call the expression Bitcoin or crypto, maybe crypto winter. We hit a crypto winter here, and now we'll have to wait and see what the charts tell us when it's going to end. But it's also interesting. I would like to point out there seems to be a tendency that when Bitcoin tops, and I'm referring to Bitcoin because that seems to be the overriding name for the whole industry, though there are obviously individual exceptions. But when Bitcoin tops, usually the stock market tops about 6 weeks later. So the top came in August in Bitcoin at 126,000, and sure enough, the overall market here around 6 weeks later is coming down too, even though Bitcoin led the way. So real interesting times. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job, exiting some of the big names, and now we're going to be, I'm not bearish forever on Bitcoin or the cryptos. In fact, I'm very bullish for all the reasons that we originally got into them. And just now we have to monitor where we think the turning point is and where we get in and how long the correction is going to last. And, it may not just be a V-type reversal where you come down. Like, imagine the letter V, you come down on the left side and you come up on the right. It may not be that type of reversal. It might be, a continuing sideways pattern or correction for a while, and it may take some time. So we just have to watch the charts and the news and this brewing situation with Japan that I just mentioned, and with rising interest rates and stuff there, and its impact on the carry trade and what could happen to equity markets and all markets everywhere. It could be, exciting here for those who are trading volatile markets. So anyway, Bitcoin is failed here somewhat predictably, and now we're just monitoring it. So I would say, if you're a long-termer and you want to nibble a little, in the 80s, and you want a little nibble more if it drops lower, it's probably not a bad idea. But, I sort of like to see the reversal pattern. I want to see that a low has been confirmed, and that could come tomorrow or it could come in late December. We don't know when that's going to happen, but if the market stays weak, like I say, tax loss selling and, selling into the end of the year by managers and those, I can imagine all the managers that finally got into Bitcoin who didn't believe it for the longest time. As you know, it had a big low last year ago, March, when BlackRock, Larry Fink's company, created the ETF for Bitcoin, ticker symbol IBIT, and from that point, from a year ago, March, we've seen a steady advance as the effect of the ETF came into the market, as those who bought the ETF helped promote higher prices in Bitcoin itself, because the managers had to go out and actually buy the Bitcoin, which was the backing to the ETF. So ever since that time, it's been up and up and up, and but it finally hit a stone wall here. Many were thinking that we were going to get to 200, 150,000, 200,000. I know there's a notable manager on CNBC, I don't want to mention names, at the beginning of the year thought we'd get to 250,000 in Bitcoin this year, which seemed a little crazy. So, but so far it's been 126. So is something going to happen between now and the third week of November and December 31st that's going to turn Bitcoin up dramatically, where it's going to explode and go right back through that 126,000 and up beyond that? Well, anything is possible, but I don't think so. But it's, I'm happy it's down, that we sold, and it's offering another potential buying opportunity, and we're just monitoring it day to day. So sorry for the long-winded response, but there's a lot going on here.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, what's going on with crude?
It's pulling back here a little bit. As you know, I'm a little bit of a bear, and we are long the inverse ETF for crude oil. I still think it has potential to go back potentially into the mid-50s, or if not the high 40s. So still a bit of a bear there. The more interesting market we discussed this last week was natural gas, which pulled off today, but has overall been inching higher in the last couple of weeks. And I think it's going to go dramatically higher. But like anything else, it trades. It's got to, I think, $4.50 level, $4.50 level, and I think there's resistance around the $5.50 level, and that's how they measure the natural gas unit in terms of price. I could see it going a lot higher than that, but it trades. It's very volatile, and it could pull back here, from the 455 level back to 3, and then go up to 7 or 8 after that. So the chart looks really interesting in natural gas. And the rationale behind that, we've touched on that before, besides geopolitical issues and everything else, is the fact that demands for high energy on the part of the hyperscalers and all these AI people, which is supposed to be satisfied with a nuclear component, won't happen for several years in some instances just because of the construction time and the implementation time for these facilities. So the thought was, and I didn't originate this, I just read it somewhere, I assume it's true, that natural gas is a decent substitute for some of the energy needs, until which time the nuclear facilities come on board. So that might, if it's really true, the chart's sort of indicating that with natural gas upticking. It's still really cheap compared to where it's been. It's really, if you look at the chart, it's coming off a big bottom. So I don't know if it's going to have the big advance that the chart says is possible or not, but the theory of the rally, besides, like I say, geopolitical other reasons, is the demand for energy, and natural gas is available and cheap. In fact, GE Vernova, ticker symbol GEV, the big company for energy equipment, produces a lot of equipment for natural gas generating, in addition to nuclear, which they also have. So that stock has been up the last couple of days too, not near its highs, but showing some upward action despite a down market. So maybe the connection between natural gas and GE Vernova and their equipment demands and so forth, creating a synergy here that helping explain what's happening out there in terms of demand. Of course, we got cold weather ahead here with the winter coming up on board, and some might argue, well, that could be the reason natural gas is upticking, because of a potentially colder winter. So we'll see. Interesting stuff.
Anything happening with uranium?
Uranium is still very strong. There are a couple of the big names up there in the last couple of weeks. For example, Cameco, which is the Canadian company, ran into new highs. Constellation Energy, which is a big player in the nuclear area, that stock was up big in the last couple of days. Now, that said, CCJ has pulled off. We had a correction, so it's responding to the market here, I guess, is the best way to describe it. It's still bullish overall, but it has experienced a little bit of a pullback here. So, I misspoke saying that it's at its highs or is at its highs. It's strong relative to where it's been this past year, but it did pull back a bit. CEG, Constellation Energy, which has been strong, also went through a correction that was up earlier in trading today. It did pull off. So I guess the bottom line is everything got extended, including the nuclear, short term, and I think they're all experiencing a needed pullback.
Anything going on the geocosmic front?
Well, the big story is that Atlas comet. Everybody's laughing about it, but I turn on, Fox Business News, and they have the professor from Harvard. I forget his last name. Avi is his first name for Abraham, but he's the head of the astronomy department, astrophysicist at Harvard, and he's been tracking the comet 3Y Atlas is the name of it. Okay, so a lot of NASA pictures have come out, and a lot of speculation that it's not acting like a normal comet, and that Avi is into the extraterrestrial component, because he was involved with that. Was it the Uma projectile that was going through the solar system in the last 3 years? It wasn't conforming to normal physics and the way it was acting, and the speculation was it was a probe from another galaxy coming through our solar system. You can read all about it, but this is a Harvard physicist talking about, an astrophysicist talking about some of these things that he's monitoring in the solar system that are not conforming to the normal, projectile pattern, so to speak. So a lot of discussion about apparently this comet Atlas, 3I Atlas. It's going to be closer to us here in December, and there's going to be more pictures of it. But there's something about the trail behind the comet and the photographs that are being taken that measure components of the tail, both in terms of light variations and components that you can measure by looking at what signals in those photos that don't seem to conform to a normal tail of a comet, and that might be attributed to a physical object that might have been a craft of some kind, perhaps. So there's a lot of speculation about it, and it could be just a lot of stories to attract guys like me that love these type of stories. But anyway, that's sort of what's going on out there. And we did have some really active, solar flare activity here in the last few days, and it was really active in the northern hemisphere. So we actually posted a picture of that. It comes from spaceweather.com, showing a lot of auroras and stuff with the solar flares. So there's been some activity there. So, but the big story, is what's going on with this comet. So anyway, fun stuff, and you can read about it if our listeners want to. Just go to spaceweather.com and you can pull up stories about what's happening, or just search Google. And the fellow's name, I apologize because I really admire him. It's Avi Loeb, Loeb. He's the Harvard astrophysicist, and you can research him and some of the work he's done around the world, and he's really, really well funded in terms of his research, in his search for extraterrestrial stuff, purely science-based, based on his research. So, interesting guy.
Mark, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you for having me.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRtrader.com. He was speaking to us from Arizona. If you have any questions for Mark or for any of our guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on X @HowStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.